class of 2015. And as the last graduating class of Chatham College for Women, we really wanted to leave our legacy on campus. So for our senior gift, we have decided to restore the carriage house patio. By the time we're celebrating our 5th reunion, the walkway will be repaved and the bricks will have an etching that reflects our legacy. To date, we've raised over $1,000, and tonight I would like to ask you all to please consider making a donation to our senior class. Our goal is to raise at least $2,015, and we've raised over $1,000 to date. So we have a collection jar and pledge cards out in Welker. So feel free to stop by our table during the networking session. And if you want to be green, you can always make your gift online at chatham.edu/seniorgift. That being said, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker tonight, Janine Yelenovsky of class of 1995. After graduating from Chatham College in 1995, Janine contracted with various temporary employment agencies while she looked for a career related to her biology degree. While working as a receptionist, a stock clerk, a data entry employee for a variety of businesses, she sent her resume to a plethora of laboratories until one day she heard back from Allegheny County Crime Lab. In December of 1996, she began an 18-year career as a forensic scientist and was promoted to laboratory manager during the last 5 years. Her managerial skills made her an attractive candidate for the operations manager position at the newly established investment advisory division at Fregasso Financial Advisors, working with her husband Robert, which was a long-term personal goal. Janine continually strives for work-life balance by engaging in activities outside of her workplace. She enjoys creating handmade greeting cards and invitations through her Cards by Janine Incorporated business, and spending time with her husband and 2 dogs in their summer home in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and remodeling their 100-year-old home in Mount Washington, and spending time with her family and friends. And lastly, she is honored to hold a seat as a board member of Chatham's Alumni Association. So please make her feel welcome to this evening. Woo!
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Sorry I wasn't networking in there prior to this, but one of my habits before speaking in front of a group, or I've had to testify in criminal court before too, is to kind of check out a little bit before I have to make an appearance. So this is just to calm my nerves down and collect my thoughts and get myself together before I talk in front of a group. So this isn't the first time I've had to talk in front of a group before. But I've never given a talk on this topic before. And Dana, where's Dana? There you are.
Hi.
It was, she caught a little tidbit of something I said at our last alumni board meeting, and that's how she wrote me into tonight's event. So,
Wow.
Next time. Me and my husband were sitting across from our desks, and I saw your email, and I'm like, oh my God. A keynote speaker? What? That was what I said at the board meeting. So here I am. Most of what I'll be talking tonight will be more anecdotal. I don't have any formal training as a manager, nor in the HR issues that can go on with hiring. So a lot of it is in the short time span that I was a manager at the Emmy's office, and the things that I experienced there. Talk about where I came from and how I got to that point, and a couple of things that I experienced, and some of the things that pretty much basically annoyed me during the process. And that's what I mean by anecdotal. It isn't anything formal. It's just my experiences in that position. So as you get older, you forget things. You forget a lot. And I can't really remember why I put an application in at the Emmy's office, but I do recall doing an internship because it was required at Chatham. And I have here a big question mark. I can't remember the year. It was either 93 or 94 during that January interim, they called it. Is it still called the same thing?
No, Mayvester.
Nope. No, it's gone?
Mayvester.
January?
Switched to May.
No. Oh, it's switched to May. Okay. For us, it was January interim. We had the fall semester, then the month of January off, and then the spring semester started up again. and we had to do an internship. So I did an internship in Warren, and I don't remember how I ended up there either, but I did an internship, and I thought when I graduated, was one of the 10 million places I put my application in. And it sat in a drawer for a year and a half. And silly me, I put my babysitter's address on there. I was living in a home here in Squirrel Hill, and I put her address and her phone number on the application and resume, because that's where I was at the time, not thinking that I would leave or circumstances would change. But thank God, me and the babysitter had a good relationship, and we kept in touch after I left their family. And she called me like in November of '96 and said, I got this weird phone call from some lab, and they want to talk to you. Here it was the crime lab. And I still get goosebumps when I think about it, like if she hadn't called me or hadn't heard from her, how different my life would be right now. So don't do that. Put something on an application or a resume, make sure it's somewhere, someone can get a hold of you, an email or address, phone number. I'm like, why did I put my parents' address? Because they haven't moved in 50 years. So don't do that. So I started my employment. I went in for an interview in early December of '96, and I started at the end of the year, December 30th actually, 1996. And I made my way through various positions. I was in drug chemistry for years 0 through 1. Then I moved over into forensic biology in years 2 through 18. Hated chemistry, loved biology. So I was very happy that a position opened up for me to move into. And then during that time, I also engaged in the mobile unit. It was voluntary. I went out and processed crime scenes for about 5 years. And then I said, been there, done that. I was given a responsibility as a CODIS administrator. And the lab here is part of the network that uploads genetic profiles to the database that makes them way up to the national level. So I was the administrator for that endeavor, and I did that for about 9 years. And then the last 5 years, I did that at the same time. I was a lab manager for the last 5 years. So they did an interview process for the management. They kept it in-house first to see if anybody was interested, and then if they didn't find a viable candidate, then they'd move it outside the lab. So that was my first interview since I started. So I hadn't had an interview in 15 years. And I wasn't going to apply for it. I'm like, oh, I see managers crying all the time, you know, they're miserable, or running around with their heads missing, and my husband's like, you should do it, you should do it, you should get the experience. I'm like, what do you see in me that you think I'm capable? He's like, you love to help people, you love to lead people and mentor them. And he said, I think, and he goes, you know a lot about your lab. He says, I think you should do it. So I was a complete mess up until the day I had an interview. We had, I ended up getting the position, and then we ended up firing 2 people. And 2 of those people came from the section that I oversaw. So someone got stepped down, and I ended up overseeing them. So it was a very awkward and tumultuous time and the start of this. So here I am wondering, you know, why I'm doing this in the first place, and then there's all this drama and chaos in the workplace. So that's how my management career started. January 2010, got the job, and then like 4 months later, I am doing interviews. So have no experience in management. The county didn't prep you. They don't send you away to some academy where you learn how to be a manager. And they barely teach you about HR stuff. They had this little HR academy. It was about once a month. And sometimes I'd open up the email and I'd look at the topic and I'd, I don't want to learn about that. Or I don't have time, or it conflicts with something. So I don't have any formal training per se in those areas. So I managed 2 different sections. I managed a forensic evidence techs that are downstairs. They're the people that receive the evidence that comes in, give it a lab case number, an item number, store it until the scientists need it, and then sign it back out to the police agencies. And then I also managed staff upstairs, about 7 to 8 scientists in the forensic biology section. So I had 2 groups of people that required different backgrounds when it came to looking at the resumes. With the evidence specialist side, the minimum requirement was a high school diploma. And we decided to upgrade that right before I left to an associate's degree or some college with applicable credits. And what concerned us was that with some people it was very difficult to teach concepts that they may have not been exposed to at all prior to coming to the lab. A lot of people in my career there, I've watched these shows pop up on TV, made their career very popular. Everyone thought it was cool. And that's about it. They thought it was cool, and I would do that. So I'm like, it's a little bit more than that when you come in the door than just, excitement. Need you to know a little bit more about what we do. So when I left, part of my exit interview was, to give my boss some, hey, what about this, what about that, you may want to think about this. And I envision actually having a scientist, someone with a degree at that, in that section, could almost be like a case manager who would understand the concepts, would understand how evidence flows from one section to another, the tests that are required, some of the science that goes into those tests and understanding them and how it can affect the outcome of a case when evidence is being handled. So that's what I would have liked to have seen in that position. And the other side of it was that we had the forensic biologists had a minimum requirement of a Bachelor of Science in either chemistry, biology, or biochem, and there were 4 required classes. And this was coming down from the FBI. It was mandated that these 4 courses must show up on your transcript. They were genetics, statistics, molecular biology, and biochemistry. Or you can have a master's degree and equivalent of work experience. We would accept that too. I'll tell you, there were an enormous amount of applications that came in. I didn't have time, no one had time, whether it was my position that was being filled or someone else's, didn't have time to go through every single application. So I'll tell you, one of the things that annoyed me was, if I couldn't find these 4 courses on your transcript, your application got discarded. And out of all the applications that that came across on my desk and I had time to look at, there was one person who wasn't real clear on his transcript that the class was, I think it was molecular biology. The class had some type of other name or something. By the sheer amount of documentation he gave, he was jumping through hoops to prove to me that he took the molecular biology class. So I knew that he read the job description, he understood which classes we were looking for, and that he wanted to show me and the county that, hey, listen, I took this class and here's all the proof. So I thought that was fabulous. So you need to pay attention to those requirements in the job description. If you don't fit it, go back and take a look at your transcripts. If you don't see those 4 courses or it wouldn't be obvious to someone reading it, it's obvious to you, you've been looking at it for 4 years. If it's not obvious, you need to make sure you explain to someone what happened or give a description. I think he gave me a copy of the course catalog. He had his professor write a letter to explain everything in that class to justify. Because when we get audits, the FBI, or not the FBI, we have an accrediting body that comes in and they look for this stuff. So they're going to be looking at our records and we shouldn't be hiring people that don't meet the requirements. So we need to have all that to justify your position in the lab. I also had people reach out to me, not sure where they got my name, or maybe they called and asked because my name isn't advertised on the job descriptions that I manage that section, but I had someone seek me out through LinkedIn. And she asked a lot of questions about the position, what it was about, is there any advice I could give her, about like free courses. There's a lot of free courses you can take out there that are related to forensics. So I liked that she reached out to me. She told me she submitted an application, and I went right looking for it. I was like, oh, I don't have to, look through some more. I actually have a candidate. So I pulled her application. And what's interesting about hers is she didn't make it. I had 3 positions total. She wasn't available for the first round. The second time I had an opportunity to hire a scientist, there was someone who had a lot more experience than her. But she called me back and said, what happened? And I had to tiptoe the HR landmine a little bit. Just be careful what I have to say, what I can say to her, but I encourage her to take those courses And she came back the second time, and I ended up hiring her. And what was interesting was that she came from a lab, we hired her, so there was a vacant position there. In her interview poll, there was another candidate who did really well, but we only had one spot, so he didn't make the cut. I gave his name to that lab and they hired him. So if you do well, it doesn't mean that you lose out. There could be another door opening somewhere for you. Part of the way the medical examiners worked, that the applicants were screened first by HR and then by me. Sometimes things would squeak through HR and they didn't do a good job of screening, so that would aggravate me too. But I'm not surprised, the sheer volume of applications that were coming through. You're bound to have some applicants come through who just don't fit the bill. So my personal experience was the less the better. If your resume is short and sweet and to the point, it's easier to read, it's easy on the eyes. I'm not feeling like I'm reading your tutorial. we all know what that's like. It's a big document, and I really, my time is precious. I need to get to the point. I need to see what you're all about, and if it's short and sweet, it made me very happy. So then we had an HR liaison in the medical examiner's office who would schedule and arrange the interview dates and times. So I would say to be courteous. If this person calls you and says this is when you're supposed to show up with your date and time, ask for that name and number. If something happens, if you have an emergency, if you need to cancel your appointment, if you're late, call that person. Show some manners. People's time is precious and time is money. So make sure you have your manners in that respect. Our interview panel consisted of about 4 to 6 people of admin staff. Usually it was me, the hiring manager, the quality manager, the lab director. Sometimes we bring in people without science backgrounds because they like to ask questions, or sometimes they'll have a hard time with a concept and they'll ask someone to explain it in like layman's terms. So we like to have a variety on the panel for interviewing. We've done face-to-face, we've done Skype interviews, and we've done FaceTime too. So with Skype and FaceTime, I say limit distractions. Don't Skype in a busy mall. I don't want to see your bedroom. A cafe, a lot of things that are going on around you that are distracting. I want to focus on you and what you're saying and the words coming out of your mouth. So I say practice with family and friends. Set some arrangements up with your friends, and let your friends give it to you. If anybody's going to give you some honest advice, it should be your close friends. Your mannerisms like twirling hair and swinging in a chair and your feet, you want to cut down on that because it's distracting. Same with loud shirts and ties and clothes. I don't want to see your nose ring. I don't want to see the little bright green fluorescent ball in your tongue bouncing around when you talk. I know people have these things, but I don't want to see them. In the lab, we wouldn't allow that. If you're going to be interacting, especially my evidence techs, they weren't allowed to show their tattoos. I had a guy who had a whole sleeve tattoo. You had to have them covered up. Just the way it is. When you go on to stand to testify, take your nose ring out, your tongue stud, I guess. It's got to come out. You got to cover your tattoo. It's just people judge you, unfortunately. When you're walking in a courtroom and you have your jury of peers, yeah, you're the peers, but they're certainly judging you, and unfortunately they just may not take you seriously if they see your tattoos and your rings all over your face. So all that kind of stuff just kind of takes away and distracts from the focus of the purpose. And the purpose is to listen to you and to interact and engage with you in a very serious decision. So that was I would recommend, and turn your phone off. Don't even put it on vibrate. Vibrate makes noise. Turn it off. Even my director who would sit there and his iPad with us, and like, for the love of God, turn that thing off. It's very distracting. So. And even that that vibration is very, it's noisy in a very quiet room when you're very serious. So just turn it off. You'll be okay for an hour. It'll be all right. Be on time, and even better yet, be there early. Just like tonight, it works very well for me. Show up early, put yourself in a quiet room, go over your notes, and collect yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for a little bit of time too. If something happened, you got stuck in traffic and you're late, don't be afraid to ask. You know, can I have a moment? You have a glass of water, or, you know, I need 5 minutes to collect myself. Don't be afraid. Another thing is do your homework. The medical examiner's website was so out of date, but no one came to the interview with questions about it. We had technology on there, we had instruments that were so out of date, we didn't use them anymore. It took like an act of God to get the website changed, and it didn't change when I left. Now, you know, and the whole time I was manager 5 years, the website hadn't changed yet. But it was so out of date, but no one came to the interview asking those questions. Part of the pop quizzes, I started the interviews off with pop quizzes, and you had to see people's faces drop. They're like, oh, quiz? Yeah. Who's the medical examiner? Okay. How about our operational areas? Do you know the 11 operational areas of the ME's office? And I'm thinking, not even from a section you're interviewing for? Forensic biology. Oh. Another question was, what's a piece of evidence? You know, all those people who say, I think it's cool, you know, it's a cool job. They couldn't give me the definition of a piece of evidence. How about chain of custody? A very simple, easy concept. 9 out of 10 people bombed the quizzes. So visit the website, do your homework. When I talked about coming with your own questions, I had a young woman who pulled out a whole sheet of questions for us. She wanted to know, what do I like about my job? What don't I like? What's my management style? And I was like, whoa. I don't even know if I know what my management style is. And so I felt like I was on the hot seat, but I like that. You know, she came prepared. And she wanted to know, how am I going to learn? I have this education. Well, what are you going to help me accomplish while I'm here? All very good questions. And that was someone who did their homework. A lot of my questions weren't technical. I had one person who we brought back for a second interview because in my 18 years there, we weren't having applicants that were coming from another lab. They were coming, you know, right out of school or from some other career field. They weren't coming from another forensic lab. So we were excited. It's the first time. She was all the way on the West Coast. And I hear this all the time. A lot of people want to come back to Pittsburgh. They have family and friends here, and they go out and get experience, and they want to come back to Pittsburgh to be closer to friends and family again. So we put her through a second interview, and that second interview was all technical, to pick her brain about what she learned there, and how her workflow was, and could she adapt to us as well. So other than that, a lot of my questions weren't technical. They were more like, I want to know who you are. I want to know what kind of person you are. So some of the questions I would ask were based on some experiences. I had staff with authority issues. I had people with ethical or moral issues. We have rude police officers, and we even have rude DAs. Those are stressful situations. How would you handle something like that? How would you handle stressful or awkward situations with coworkers, or worse yet, what happens if you have this horrible experience on the witness stand? How do you deal with issues like that? So some of my favorite questions were, I'm talking a lot. Describe an appropriate relationship between a supervisor and a subordinate. Another question is, you're experiencing conflict with coworkers that are uncomfortable. And tell me when the last time you had a conflict and how did you resolve it? Part of the lab is doing repetitive tasks. You open one bag of crack on day 1, it's going to look like the same bag of crack on day 1,000. And we have a lot of bags of crack to come in. Unfortunately, it's open. Heroin packets too. How do you remain motivated to open up day after day? Not a baggie of crack, bad do you crack? I did it for a year. It's so monotonous. So monotonous. But how do you deal? How do you deal with that? How do you remain motivated? How do you remain excited about coming in the next day and opening up another 100 bags of crack? One of my favorite is the difference between, I want your definition of the difference between honesty and loyalty. And which one do you value most? And this is one of the questions where I was actually looking for I think there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And my right answer was I want honesty. Because someone can be loyal and they could turn a blind eye. And you could do things that are wrong or inappropriate, unethical, immoral, and they'll turn their eye and they'll still be loyal to you. And they won't tell you. And I want someone who's honest.